share the PowerPoint. Okay, so what we're looking at today is 3 critical mistakes that managers make accidentally, and what they can do instead to be a much more engaging leader and create a high-performing team. All right, so a little bit about me. You perhaps know a little bit about me, but here's a little bit more. And on the left, you can see me. I'm a Collingwood. So I used to play for Collingwood briefly, and I'm still a Collingwood member and passionate supporter. So I was at the grand final last year. Not so good year this year. Hopefully we'll bounce back. I also like to still keep fit. So there's a picture of me trudging away in one of the fun runs. And down the bottom is one of the groups from not too long ago that we had at Melbourne Business School at Carlton. There's me over on the left as leading that leadership program that we had there at that time. And leadership has really become the key passion and purpose for me. And what I'm looking to do now is to help as many leaders as possible, because I really believe that when we have good leadership all throughout different types of our lives, in the community, in sports groups, in government, in corporate, when we have really good leadership, then we're setting the direction for people to create a better world, and we're also creating a better and happier environment for people to operate in. So that's my key purpose and what I'm looking to do with my life going forward. A little bit more about me. First became a manager in my late 20s. Didn't have much training, but sort of jumped in, trying to learn by trial and error. Thought I was doing better than what I really was, and put in a lot of effort and a lot of time to achieve good results. And in some ways I was getting some good results. In other ways I wasn't. Eventually I got some leadership training and coaching. And then with that help and insight, I improved more in 1 year than I had in the previous 7 years. And I'm seeing same sort of pattern so often in other people. Others in my corporate career started asking me about my improvement and to coach them and to help them. And eventually I got out of corporate and became a full-time leadership coach and facilitator. That was about 15 years ago. And I've run leadership training for over 1,500 people, coached hundreds and hundreds of managers. And in particular, I've helped those managers to work less, have better life balance, right? Be healthier, get promoted and earn more, hit targets, and have a motivated team. Okay. There's some of the outcomes, which leads to their overall increased job satisfaction, which is some of the experience that I had. And that's what I'm using to move on and to help others to experience the same sort of thing and change a little bit of this mindset that you have to work such really long hours to be successful as a manager and a senior leader. So let's look at some of the current state, and then I want to check in with you shortly about how you're going. But one of the things that Gallup shows us in the research, and this has been very consistent over a lot of years now, is that only 23% of employees are actually engaged. So 77% are not. They're either neutral or they're somewhat disengaged or actively disengaged. Okay. Now, unfortunately, the area that has the most impact on engagement is their employee's direct manager. All right. So there's something that needs to change here to improve engagement with management and leadership and their training and development. Half of all employees feel like they're being micromanaged. But when you ask the managers, they don't think they are micromanaging others very often. And 68% of employees say managers don't fix some frustrations that the employees believe could be easily fixed, that the managers don't do it. They don't see it. They don't listen to them. They don't make the time to fix them. Now, this costs a lot within an organization. 75% people say that they have left their job because of their immediate manager, and that costs a lot of money. Low engagement, as we've just been talking about, according to Gallup, costs about 20% of employees' salaries. Now, if you do some round numbers here and say, let's just use $100,000 for the whole employee package and on costs, and let's even say that 20% is a bit high. You cut that down to 10%. That's $10,000 per person per year. It's a lot of money here that if you're not getting your managers performing well, that is adding up in your costs. Turnover, one estimate is 150% of salary costs per employee. That's employees with key expertise or those that are team leaders or managers themselves. So think about a salary. Bump that up a little bit from the 100,000 for a team leader, and you've got over $100,000 that it's costing the organisation just if one person leaves. And then there's other elements here: theft, industrial action, chronic absenteeism. So that's where people are not coming to work because of their low engagement rather than they're actually being sick or injured, and other costs associated with staff issues. So it's potentially costing organisations lots of money. Okay. So how do we get here? Let's have a look at the problem, and then let's hear a bit from you as to what you're experiencing, where you're at, and how you're going. So as we see it, this is the reason, these are the reasons that this has happened, okay? So unfortunately, what's happening in a lot of instances is people get promoted to team manager or team leader, manager, into that management role, managing other people because they've been there the longest or they're the best performer. And essentially they get asked or implied, get the others to do what you do. Unfortunately, putting them in the deep end this way, like I started, trying to learn by trial and error, doesn't work very well. And that's where you start to get those costs that we've just been talking about. And there's also costs in terms of the time senior management, how much they have to get involved and how it affects that business area or unit or organisation from growing. Right. Now, the next level of what people do, what organisations do is, and a lot of organisations do this, they provide some level of training. Okay, some online training, maybe some courses, occasionally some face-to-face stuff. I've run a lot of these. There's lots of great content. What we see clearly, though, is the challenge is that most people struggle to implement what they've learned on a consistent basis. Okay, and they quickly revert back to the old habits. So again, this puts a weight on management. People aren't developing as quickly as they like. One of the interesting things we're seeing now is that people are opting out of management at a higher rate than they ever have before. Okay, which again creates a problem within organisations for lack of experience in that management space, slower business growth, and overall lower value of commercial businesses. What we really want to happen here is for us to have fast track. This is what should be happening, but unfortunately happens in very few organisations. And that's where there's a clear transition plan into the management and leadership role. And that's where you're given proven systems to enable you to be successful, to create high-performing teams. And you're given ongoing support to continue to develop those skills that you need to be an effective manager and leader. Yes, just because you're given the title doesn't mean you automatically have the skills. And then, as you can see there, there's significant benefits to the organisation as well. The succession plans, profit, retention, business value. That's what ideally should be happening, but is it happening in less than 5% of organisations? Okay, and some of the reason for that is because people they don't really understand how to go about all of that, or they believe they don't have the resources, they don't have the funds to put this in place. Okay, and that's one of the things that I'm changing with how I'm going about the leadership development programs. So what I'd like to do now is get you to think about some things yourself, where you are at. And there's 3 things. And if you like, you can draw this triangle and ask yourself these questions, and I'll give you a few minutes just to reflect, and it'd be great to get some input in the chat or people talking. But the first question on the left there is, how are you performing now? Giving yourself a rating out of 10. From 1 to 10, where 1 is low, poor performance, 5 is just average, 10 is you at your personal best. So it's not perfect. It's not something that's unachievable. It's if you are at your very best, imagine that's 10 out of 10. So thinking about now or over the last 6 to 12 months, How would you rate yourself? And in a moment, I'll share also what some others have shared with their ratings. On the right-hand side, there's another question. It's about how clear you are about what is your authentic leadership style. Have you done some work around understanding that, your strengths and weaknesses, your values, your work style, how you want to be as a leader? Give yourself a rating out of 10 as to how clear you are with that. Take your time. Got some in the chat there. Thank you. And then down the bottom, another question. I'm sure you can all read it. It's about the tools and resources. Do you have them all? And the second part of this question is, if you do have quite a lot of them, how consistently and effectively are you using them? All right, so let's hear back from some people. So Mithen's given us an 8 and a 7, which is great. That's pretty high. And we'll see in a moment, that's actually unusually high. 8 for the tools. People often give us a high number for the having the tools, and then they want to give themselves a different rating for how effectively they're using the tools. So feel free to bring yourself off mute or to type more details into the chat as to what's happening for you around these. Thanks, Matt.
I would say I'm probably at the lower end compared to the others, probably maybe a 4 out of 10 for performing, and maybe 5 for the leadership style, and let's say a 5 for the tools and resources.
Okay. Andrew, thank you very much for sharing. I appreciate that. And it shows courage for you to share that when it's a bit different to the others. So I really appreciate that courage and honesty. Thank you. So we've got you starting to think about where you're at. Okay. Now, whatever your score is around these elements, these building blocks to you being at your best, of course, one of the questions to ask is what's in the gap between 5, 6, 7, and 8 and 10 out of 10. Because we've put in the criteria that 10 out of 10 is something that's achievable. And another really interesting question to ask yourself, just to help with your reflection, and I encourage you to take this away and think about it, is how come it's not lower than the rating that you gave? So that's one to take away and reflect on. That takes a bit more depth, and it helps you to consider, how did I come to that rating in a little bit more time and space than I've given you right now. Okay. Would anyone like to ask any questions or to go into any more depth around these reflection questions?
The only thing I would say, Michael, coming into it, is people's ratings might be a direct reflection of how long they've been either with an organisation or B, how long they've been in that business. By that, I mean, for me, for example, I've been in the same job, in the same role for 9 years now. We're quite a mature business, so you probably expect me to have maybe high numbers, nowhere near 10, of course, but maybe for other people, is it more a direct reflection of how long you've been in a role or with an organisation that contributes to those ratings that people give? Maybe.
Yes, it's a very good point. It does, because even with the throw you in the deep end or the trial and error, the longer you are, the more you kind of figure it out. And a lot of people eventually get to a pretty good level of 7 or 8. Even with that approach, it just takes 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very good point, and you're exactly right. And part of what we're looking at here is how do we do this so it takes people only 1 to 2 years instead of 5 to 10 years to get to something like an 8 out of 10.
Sure.
Yeah. And with some of these, like being clear on your authentic leadership style, you can get 8, 9, 10 out of 10 within just a couple of months. And yet most people haven't actually thought through this, and very few people have written it down to get clear on what it is.
Yeah. Is it a case sometimes that you ask people what their authentic leadership style is, and we all collectively automatically say, I'm really clear on what it is. Probably the greater question is, are the people around the business, are the people in your department, are they as clear as what you think you are on that? I think most people say, I'm really clear on my style. The important part is, are the people that you're working with clear on it? Maybe sometimes business, I've seen managers fail where they think they're they think that everyone's on the same page, but the people underneath them, around them, to the side of them aren't really on board like they think they are. Their view is tainted somewhat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the manager, so I'm clear. I'm clear on my instructions. I know what I'm doing. Do as I say, don't do what I do. But the subordinates then go, no, that manager's not listening to me, or doesn't understand, or doesn't have enough empathy, or whatever it is. It's easy to be clear on your style, but is the people around you, are they clear on what you're doing and not doing? That'd be my comment.
Yes, and that's a great way to check in. Corey, you wanted to mention something?
Yeah, actually, I agree wholeheartedly with what Michael just said. Is that we do disc profiling.
Yep.
And I'm a heavy I, so I'm an influencer, and which is interesting from a numbers people, but most of the rest of the senior leadership team and business owners are strong Ds and dominant people. And so it takes an exceptional amount of my energy to try and adapt to largely dominant other types of individuals. And even though I'm true with myself and the way that I manage my team is trying to be influencing and all of that stuff like that, it significantly impedes the performance. Because my leadership style, for instance, is not a way that actually is easily received by the other personalities, if you know what I mean, when it comes to getting things done.
Yep.
So, and I think that's a pretty salient point. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Absolutely, and that connects back with Matt's point as well.
Matt to you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all good. So the different personality styles absolutely make a big difference, and it's more challenging when your senior management are perhaps not displaying some of the flexibility and empowerment that would be ideal. And there are some things that you can do around that to have a different type of impact on that, but it is challenging. It does affect how well you're able to implement your authentic leadership style. And then what Matt said is the impact you have on others, how others perceive your style is the true results of what you're doing. So even if you're trying to do something around being yourself as an authentic leader, what really shows whether you're being successful or not is whether other people are seeing that's your style and your approach. And you don't have to keep it secret either. Like you can tell people what it is that your style is and how you want to go about things. And that's perfectly okay. All right, let's keep moving on. Let's have a look at what other people have said when they've asked them to rate themselves. And I've asked a lot of people now, and most rate themselves in that 3 to 6 out of 10 area. Okay, so that's very common. That's the rating that we get. And as was mentioned earlier, it does have some connection to how long you've been in the role, and newer managers tend to be the ones that are down lower. Yet everyone wants to be 8 to 10 out of 10. It's about how do they get there. So what is the experience like depending on how you're rating yourself? Well, if you're down at that 3 out of 10 area, usually what's happening is your confidence is low. You feel like there's a high workload. You're doing a lot of the stuff yourself, especially the hard and complex stuff. You're not getting time to be strategic. And very quickly, people start to think about whether this is for them and whether they might burn out or leave. When it's maybe around about 6, there's some definite improvement there, or what people are describing as a confidence roller coaster. Right? And they're trying to develop themselves and implement some new things, that it's actually becomes more of a challenge. It's harder than they think, so they revert back to old habits fairly quickly, which still means that they're working long hours and they don't have a lot of time to be strategic and add value. But those that are right up there around about 10 have consistently high confidence. They're able to implement a leadership style that engages and empowers, yet still also holds people accountable, gets high level of results with high engagement. And on top of that, they add strategic value to the broader organization, and they're proactive, and they're much more likely to get promoted. So that's where you could be. Now let's have a look at what's happening for most managers as part of this, where they get themselves in the loop and get stuck in the things that are going wrong. So most people have something inside their head regularly, especially early on in their career, where it says, it's easier to do it myself, or when I do it, I know it'll be done right. So as I'm saying these things, think about you and your colleagues. Are these things potentially happening for you? And if it is, it's actually a form of sabotaging you from being at your very best. All right. So what we're looking at is it doesn't work effectively if you say you just want to do it yourself, even though it seems easier at the time. So what needs to happen instead? Okay. First of all, let's have a look at more about the detail on this, and looking at what's happening with the managers yourself or in your organization. Are you or your managers stepping in and fixing the challenging situations, stopping the team from failing, because you want to make sure the team looks good and you look good as the leader of the team, right? So making sure that you're improving or fixing the situation. Do you give your team members answers, really clear, specific, detailed answers to all their questions? Okay. Think about, is this what's happening for you or in your organizations? Do you tell them exactly what they need to do to complete their tasks? Sounds pretty logical, right? Well, this is what you've got to stop doing. So this is where we need you to actually do something different. They seem like the correct things to do, but unfortunately, these are the critical mistakes that most managers make, especially early in their management career, and they don't realize that these are mistakes. They're doing it accidentally. They think it's the right thing to do to achieve success, but it's actually the key thing that's going to lead to overwhelm and burnout and just average performance with high workload for most managers. Okay. So anybody here, have you experienced at some point in your career saying these things to yourself or going through this type of approach? Yes, and thanks, Corey. Imposter syndrome can be a little bit part of what's driving these behaviours as well.
Yeah, no, I think these are common. I've seen these both in myself and in my managers as well, in how they go about day-to-day operations. Thanks,
Andrew. Yeah. Anyone else, feel free to jump in or type in to the chat. One of the biggest challenges is most managers describe to me, even some of them that have been working, 5-10 years plus, that they fall back into these habits because they feel like there's pressure from the organization, from their managers, to do these things, right? To make sure that they get the best outcomes, to make sure that it's all done correctly. And they kind of emphasize that you should fix it as the middle manager, as the team leader, okay? And unfortunately, you've got to work through that part of the challenge. And if you want to be really effective as a manager and a leader, you've got to be able to get past that and focus on what is going to make you highly effective as a manager. Now, why do these things not work? Okay. So when you look at all of these steps, some of the key reasons that they don't work is because you're actually working with your team to say to them, if you don't work that hard, if you're not proactive, right? If you just come to me with the questions, I'll do all the work. Okay. In the first one, if somebody does just an average to okay job and you step in and fix it or increase the quality, they start to consciously or subconsciously think to themselves, I'll put in a bit of effort, but Michael's going to change it anyway. He's going to come in and fix it. So why bother going the extra mile to try and get it right? He's going to do it his way. He's going to fix it. Okay. And the second one, why bother trying to think through all the answers to the questions? I just go to Michael and ask him the answer. He'll tell me. So what you're doing is letting your team get into a comfort zone in the way that they operate. Yes, jump in, Corey. What would you like to say?
Oh, look, thank you. And I don't mean to hijack it because it's really quite insightful what you're presenting. But I sometimes find that it just spreads like a cancer and it doesn't become a manager issue. It becomes a... So when you have, micromanagers that they tell you how to do their job, they check in 15-minute increments, they intervene, they either undermine or sabotage the work. And even though you have all the authority, you get to the end of the day and you just go, I need to order a mouse and keyboard for my desk, and I'm even concerned that the colour's not going to match, so I'll need to ask my manager if that's okay. And what then happens is the people who actually do have these things sorted find that they unsort them because they just give up in the end.
Yep.
So it's easy just for me to say, oh, don't worry, Michael's going to do it. So, and then everyone in the team just goes, oh, Michael's going to do it. And before you know it, everyone's doing it.
Spot on. You're exactly right. Yep. And so you're describing exactly the impact.
Everyone gives up. Yep.
This situation. Everyone gives up, or they cruise. They know that medium level average effort, and it takes somebody somewhere along the line, and in one of the management positions, to be brave, to be courageous, to push against the flow, to start to get a little bit of momentum, a little bit of a ripple effect, creating an element of change. And I've helped people do that within organizations. Sometimes also people look to do that, and then they also reflect on their values and their authentic leadership statement and say, is this going to work? Is there alignment with myself being authentic with my values and the organizational values? Not necessarily the values that are described, but the values that are actually lived in the organization. Sometimes you've got to think about whether it's a fit. There's an opportunity to make change through the organization, or perhaps there's different ways to look at how you make a change in your career. You're describing exactly the impact of these three critical mistakes, Corey. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and it is important because the manager fail is the organisation fail.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Yeah, and the team. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it is. That's right. And it becomes that management shared responsibility much more than the individuals or the group in the team at the coalface level. So what should we do instead? Okay. So firstly, with this model that I have, there's three key levels that you can look at to create that success at the top. First is about self-leadership. I'll just go through this really quickly, which is understanding your identity, and that's all about that authentic leadership style and elements, strengths, weaknesses, values, etc. And also impact. What impacts you and what impact do you have on other people, which is coming back again to what Matt mentioned before. Then there's people leadership level, okay? And the first element of that is building a foundation of trust, and that creates an environment of psychological safety. And then the leap is the mindset change from being the person who has been doing the stuff and knows how to do it really well to letting go of doing it and being a leader of people and getting outcomes through people. And then there's strategic leadership, and that's making sure there's alignment within the team and then from the team to the other groups in the organization and to the broader organization. And then there's strategic acumen. That's where you're thinking about how am I growing and developing strategically so that I add strategic value. I'm not just a manager who makes sure tasks get ticked off. I'm actually adding more value. And all of this put together is what makes you more valuable as a contributor. It's more likely to get you promoted and better wages, bonuses, and also be happier and satisfied. So let's have a look at some more specific stuff around what we can do differently instead of the elements of the critical mistakes leaders have been making. Right, the first thing to do is to think of leadership development is about skills that you need to practice and improve. All right. Now, think about anything that you would like to improve in. And often it's easier to think about things outside of work. Some people play the guitar. I'm starting to learn how to dance. Lots of people play tennis. Right? When I started to dance, I was hopeless. Right? I'm not that great now, but I have improved a lot. Okay. Now, leadership it's the same approach. It's got a set of skills, and just because you're given the title of a manager doesn't mean you can become really good with those skills straight away. It depends on where your skill set has been before that and what you're doing to develop it going forward. So if you want to be good at it, you need to be consistently practicing it. And unfortunately, most of the leadership development that happens out there at the moment doesn't focus on this, right? It focuses on throwing a whole lot of content at you, and then you've got to try and figure out how do you actually get better at those skills. So that's the first thing, changing mindset about being really good at building those skills and implementing the tools and techniques to improve those skills. And then here's 3 critical steps to really think about that can help you improve. And feel free to jump in and ask questions as we're going along. So first, let's look at them at a high level, which is about creating an environment that's based on trust and creates a psychologically safe environment. Then using proven leadership processes, right, rather than trying to figure it out trial and error or by yourself. And then having expert guidance, support that you're getting on a regular basis to keep you developing and growing as a leader. Okay, so let's look at each of these in more detail. First one is trust and psychological safety. So Google research with over tens of thousands of people showed that psychological safety was the #1 factor for high-performing team. Okay, and the foundation of that is trust. And yet most managers are not thinking enough about how they're going about building trust. All right, they think they're doing okay. Employees don't agree at all. And one of the key things that's happening is that managers are doing a lot of small things that break trust. An example is a focus heavily on, have you completed a task? Where are you at with this task? Is this done? What's the results? What's the KPI measure? Okay. And what the employees, the team members are saying is that focus means that they don't seem to be interested in me, right? And that breaks trust. It breaks down that connection. So it's about really thinking about, from management and leadership point of view, what builds trust, what breaks trust, and how do I go about consistently building that trust? There's lots of elements. Empowerment is one of the important ones. But again, if you empower someone, if you give them a task to do and then you fix it at the end, or you take it over to make sure it's done really well, that breaks trust. even one of the key things that comes up with many of my clients around this is they set up one-on-one meetings as managers to have with their individual team members. And very consistently, unfortunately, the managers are late, change the time, cancel the meeting, and occasionally they just don't show up at all. So as soon as you've done any of those twice in about a 12-month period, you're breaking trusts. And each time you do it again, you're breaking a little bit more trust. So it's really thinking about, how am I going in building trust? And that's going to go a long way to creating more engaged and motivated team members. We're likely to be much more proactive. Now, the next part is about getting together and being really clear about what are the leadership processes that you need. What are the tools and models and things that you need that are going to help you to be at your best as a leader? Because most people who go into management for quite a number of years, they're trying to figure this out as they go along. And when you're doing it ad hoc as you're going along, it doesn't develop your skills very well. Okay? So you need to think about having these proven processes so you're repeating the same things and developing your skills. For things like holding people accountable, helping people set them up to be at their best, having conversations, difficult conversations, dealing with conflict, even about giving effective feedback, which most managers don't actually know what the core elements are of effective feedback. Right? So you want to think about it. If you're building a house, if you're building something, would you want someone who figured it out as they went along? Right? No plans, no structure, no repeatable process, or would you prefer to have that repeatable process? Of course, it's going to be much more effective if you have those processes mapped out that you know that you're developing and growing, and you already know that other people have used them and that they're effective. Okay. So think about those things, as I said, for feedback, for delegation, for dealing with conflict, for creating high-performing teams, knowing exactly what are the models, tools, and processes that work and using them yourself. And the next one is about getting the expert guidance to consistently develop your skills. Okay. And I think about this from a sports point of view. So for those that are into sport, if you think about people who are in the Olympics, who are in sports teams, AFL teams, soccer teams, national teams, individual tennis players, golfers, they want to be at their best. They get people around them, coaches, multiple coaches, people analyzing their performance, video analysis, lots of feedback. They're getting support around them to look at how they can consistently improve and develop. Managers tend to try and survive, focus more on getting tasks done rather than growing and developing. But you need to be able to develop skills just like you would in the other areas that I was talking about, sports people, guitar, dancing. So how do you go about developing that from a leadership point of view and get to be where you can be at your very best, your personal best as a leader? So one of the great places to start, we've already talking about, is that leadership vision statement. And then it becomes, how do you implement that and what support guidance are you getting to make sure that you're working towards getting to be 8, 9, 10 out of 10? So one of the ways to do that is get an accountability partner who's going to support you, who will engage with you, give you some feedback, help you develop, but also be private and confidential. Yeah, and mentorship programs are some of the things that can really help in this area. The feedback that we get around mentorship programs within organizations is that it works well in certain aspects of more technical skills and some parts of leadership skills. For most managers and leaders, there's elements of talking about confidence, or they're trying to implement something that's not going as well as they would really like to. And most managers say that the internal mentoring programs are a little bit hesitant in most instances for really being totally open and sharing how they're feeling or some of their struggles. So often it's better for people to find someone either in the organization that they really trust, which is rare, or somebody outside the organization that they can trust. So they're the three elements. Let's just check and see if there's any thoughts or questions before we look at where you can go moving forward from here.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I'm proud. I'm trying to sound pretentious, but proud to be part of the Institute of Chartered Accountants Mentorship Exchange Program.
Okay,
so
yeah.
I lend myself as a mentor, and mentees are assigned to me during the year with a bit of a program, and we cover off a lot of these things outside of the organisation. And it is amazing too that many approach you and say, oh, they just want another job, or they want to get out, or they don't like it. Maybe the profession's wrong for them. Whereas in actual fact, I work out that they're just working for the wrong employer, and they need to develop certain of these leadership skills to actually be either able to promote themselves within the organisation or to give themselves a better skills of going. And what you're saying is absolutely 100% correct. You're not going to be a guitar virtuoso until you actually get it out of the box for the very first time to try. So practice equals skill, absolutely. So thank you for those insights.
Thank you for sharing and having those industry-based mentoring programs is a much more effective way to go about it. So thank you for sharing and definitely agree that's an ideal setup for a mentoring program. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions?
Oh, just one from me, Michael. I think something just resonated with what the two of you just said then. We have an experienced leadership group, senior leadership group, and often talk about the two great words here. Here they come: succession planning, and how we need to improve this and how we need to get better at it. But I think the very reason we don't is because of what we just said. Then, if we apply that athlete example, where you want to get better at dancing or playing a guitar, you get lessons, you get coaching, you find information from people that you trust, people that you know from outside the business. I emphasize that because what we often try and do is we all talk about succession planning inside the business, but that's where it quickly degenerates down to just talking about operations or what's happening in the given month or the given quarter or whatever it is. And you sort of find you end up going back to where you started. I feel like I'm in that vicious cycle a bit where talk about developing managers and developing ourselves and improving, but we don't if we don't use people from outside the business. Because when you're all inside the one room, you're all in the big bubble, I think. So you need outside people like a coach, like a personal trainer, like a lecturer, whatever it is, like a mentor. I think that's kind of what I need to take out of this. Definitely. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Great insight. And what you're describing, I've had many dozens of organizations say the same thing. It's always a real challenge when they're thinking about either leadership development, succession planning, or something else supposed to be strategic, and they fall back into pretty quickly the operational.
100%.
Yeah, it's very, very, very common.
Yeah.
So that's you're not the only one by any means, and there's an insight. And there's still some things that need to happen internally. That's an important part of leadership growth and succession planning. And it's much more effective if there can be some elements that are outside of that as well, getting that external support and guidance. Yeah. Good. All right. Let's just finish off a couple of things here, and please feel free to jump in and ask any questions along the way. So this is a little bit about how I might be able to help you, but also reflecting on whether you want to try and leave things the way they are, do it yourself, what are the costs if you or people in your organization don't make any changes? If, for example, you go another 2, 3, 5 years without good succession planning or leadership development programs, what does it mean for you? What will it cost you in dollars? What will it cost you in other ways, personally and in your organization? And if you did make a change, what is that worth to you? What is it worth to the people in your organization to feel like there's high confidence? Have that engaging team. And then if you don't have some of those costs that we spoke about earlier, it can make some significant difference. One of the smaller organizations that I'm working with at the moment has had a 40% increase in measurable productivity and KPIs within 6 months from one of the new team leaders that's come into there. I'm working with the senior manager and a team leader. Okay. And individually, you can think about the career options that it gives you. So here's a little bit of information going forward. Also, I'm happy with this to offer an opportunity to win 12 months worth of leadership coaching and leadership program. So if that's of interest to you, you can email me just with the subject leadership coaching, and then someone will win that in the next week or so. And here's a little bit about the program that I have set up. It's different in the sense that it's not just a training program where you take away your content and sort of wish you good luck at implementing things. It's an outcome-based program. So I work with you in a format that's helping you to transform into that authentic, engaging leader that you want to be at your very best. Okay. And the program includes online video-based leadership training, okay, where you get the 6 modules that cover that leaderized model that I spoke about before. And then there's activity workshops that you do as part of implementing what you learned in the videos, and you submit that to me. You get 3 one-on-one coaching sessions, and you also get weekly live small group coaching sessions for 12 months. I've put all of this together so it addresses the things that we were talking about earlier with the problems. But rather than just have the programs that people go to, as I said, I've run them. There's lots of great content, but people have the challenges in implementing them. I've put this together so most of the focus is on helping you to implement those tools, to get better at those skills across an extended period of time. And I've created it in a way that it's very cost effective for organizations. So it's not at the one-on-one executive coaching level that most people think about they need to pay for coaching. So it's I believe it's very cost effective. Okay. So I also enable it to be risk-free. So if it's not what you think that you're going to get, if this doesn't work for you as you start the program, you get your money back, no problems at all. As I said, I'm there all the way along to help you implement it. You can devote about 2 hours a week, still be at your best in a few months. So if you want to find out more, we can also have a further discussion and a complimentary coaching session. And here's just some of the things that a couple of people have said about being involved in the program. I won't read this through. I'll let you read this at your own pace. You can see the improvements that have been made there by Alex. And then Jude's a very interesting one in the sense that he's very educated, very intelligent, and completed the MBA. But he recognised that, as we've been talking today, just applying those specific leadership skills and the subtleties of how to improve with those areas, something that hadn't been clearly taught in the MBA or in all of the other education that he'd done. So it made a big difference once he made some of those changes to really get good at implementing those skills. So, opportunity for final questions before we wrap up. anything else that you would like to ask about?
No, just thank you, Michael. Just interesting to look at those 3 mistakes. So you're right in many ways, and you know it's not, people don't understand the consequences of not getting it right. So that's just where I'm at with that, and appreciate the time you put in today. Again, I'm sorry I'm late. I had another crisis that I had to deal with.
Well, sorry to hear you had a crisis, and I really appreciate you being able to make it. Thank you very much, Corey.
Yeah, that's okay. I just I had an employee who just found out a father had passed away and had to take off to the airport. So I'm like, I need to be somewhere, but this is a bit more important.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Michael.
No worries at all. Thank you. And yeah, if there's anything else that I can do, if any questions pop up, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Michael. And I look forward to seeing your posts on LinkedIn and seeing what you're up to.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Thanks, Michael. Echoing Corey's thoughts. Thank you for that. Plenty of food for thought.
Thank you, Matt. No worries. Thanks, Michael. Bye-bye.
Plenty to discuss there. So, yes, we'll be in touch.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, please, anything that I can do to help, just let me know. And it's good to touch base again.
Definitely.
All right. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.